Hi, I'm Laura, your connection coach. Have you ever felt lonely? In a world that feels increasingly divided, it is more important than ever to find ways to connect with others. Loneliness is a common experience, but it doesn't have to be a permanent one. On the Bliss Republic podcast, we explore all the ways we connect with each other and discuss the benefit of having strong relationships. We believe that the key to overcoming loneliness is connection. My guests come from all walks of life and will hear about their unique experience with connection. Whether you're looking to deepen your existing relationships, build new ones, or simply feel more connected to the world around you, the Bliss Republic podcast is for you. Today we have on Arian Samouie. Arian is a healer and intuitive trauma coach. Your personal mission is to transform people's ability to connect with themselves by understanding how their emotions work and how to use these emotions to change their lives. The main area is self-development through trauma healing, raising self-awareness to increase emotional intelligence, and you offer courses in person and online. You have helped about over 600 people. You released 2 workbooks available on Amazon, Change Your Beliefs, a guide to personal transformation, and a shadow work journal, Conscious Integration, illuminating your inner aspects. Welcome to the Bliss Republic podcast.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Arian, you moved to England when you were about 5 years old, coming from Iran, where you were fleeing from the war together with your family. How did fleeing war impact your early childhood and the ability to connect with others?
Well, so we came from Iran. I was 5 years old. We came in 1990 to the United Kingdom. Knowing what I know now, I look back on it in terms of how that affected me. At the time, we had no idea. You know, you hear all the time that we live in survival. The world lives in survival. There's a reason and there's an understanding of what that actually means. It doesn't necessarily mean to the degree where you're physically fighting for survival, but there was so many aspects of physically fighting for survival. It was really, really crazy. There was so many times I remember actually feeling what it felt like to be in the street and for it to be okay if someone was murdered or someone died. When you're in an environment where it's like, no, that can happen, and that's like in itself is a bit of a mind-blowing experience. And I remember remembering what that felt like as a child, and that itself was extremely traumatizing. There was so many repressed memories. I remember my mom told me some things that happened that I had completely just taken out of my memory bank. One of them was in Iran, the drainage system is an open drainage system. So it's not closed off with grids or anything. It's completely open. And we'd just be in the car driving down the road. And on the radio, you'd hear like, oh, the bombs are coming. So then my parents took us out the car, threw myself and my older brother in the drainage system and like laid on top of us to protect us from if the bombs hit the buildings and anything falling. And you hear that, and I heard my mother tell me that story, and I was like, whoa, that's where I came from. And I had absolutely no idea. And my parents were trying to keep me from anything that they could, trying to protect me in the best way that they could. But I remember like going into the basement, like everyone running in the basement, and I was crying because I wasn't allowed to go get my toys. I couldn't understand why. I was like, just let me get my toys. And they can't be like, well, a bomb might hit us and kill us, so no. There was so many things, and it works in so many different ways. We came to England, myself, my brother, and my mother came without my dad, and we were here for 2 years without my dad. And that, again, had a huge effect on the whole family. But when you come from that environment, my mother came here, we had family here, we stayed with them, but we only had like one family unit here. Whereas like in Iran, you've got all your cousins, all your aunties, all your uncles. But here it was like real living in survival. We were all like really living in survival. It's like we'd go to the park and it'd be like, be careful, don't go too close to people because she just came from war. So really living in survival, not just coming from war, but you're coming without your husband as well and your children. So you're just constantly protecting. That upbringing, being protected in a very aggressive way, all of that played a huge role the culture, the upbringing of the culture plays a huge role, especially in the Middle East. The culture that there is extremely emotionally neglectful. You know, my parents' attempt to protect us is they're not really telling us much about it. My experience was I have no idea what's going on. These random crazy things are happening. We're going from this country to this country. My world is completely being flipped upside down, and I don't even know why. Don't know what's happening. My grandmother was like my first love, the person that I love the most. It's like, can't see grandma anymore. It's like, what? Why not? So it was like, and their attempts to try and protect me, it was like not explaining anything. So it really, really absolutely affected me. Really, really did.
Can you name an example of a thing that happened to you afterwards where you can say, that's because of my childhood?
Most of my life. There are examples. Everything is a reflection. So everything that we go through mirrors back to you in your reality, and it will create that mirror in your reality. I have needed to understand the part of myself that have gone through the traumatic experiences. But one example is being my entire reality just changing in a blink of an eye. You know, they never told me that we were going to move to the United Kingdom until it was actually happening. So it's like, right, we're going. So for me, it was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And in previous relationships, I've been in relationships where in the morning, everything was okay. In the evening, the relationship was completely ended. Like it was done. It was gone.
Wow.
And, you know, so that was like the repeat of that for me to go like, what just happened? Like my entire reality just got flipped on its head. What's just happened here? And that's not just necessarily partnerships. It's happened in friendships or relationship with people at work or positions at work and through the careers that I've had. Just anything that can kind of like flip my reality on its head to be like, where did this come from? A few hours ago, everything was okay, or at least it wasn't as bad. And now it's just completely flipped. So that would be one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, wow. Have you had experiences with loneliness coming out of this traumatic childhood?
Absolutely. Loneliness is an epidemic. It's something that everyone that isn't necessarily doing the work. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, you're bad or wrong if you're not doing the work, but that's the reality. Loneliness is not necessarily because of one trauma or another. The concept of trauma is something that isn't understood globally. You know, there's a lot of shame around it. We only think trauma is like when these really, really big things happen. It's not. Trauma happens so much more than most people would actually recognize.
So what is
And
trauma?
trauma, the best definition of trauma that I've heard, which I agree with wholeheartedly, is when you experience emotional distress without any resolution for that distress. In that moment, it is emotionally traumatic. We are emotional beings that think. We're not thinking beings that feel emotions. So emotions are kind of like first in terms of like how we work. We are emotions first. We have our emotional health, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. But emotions kind of come at the beginning. Our mental health is like, well, our mental health affects our emotional health. Like, yeah, but our mental health is the way it is because of the emotional trauma that we've experienced. As emotions are first, when we are experiencing emotional distress without any resolution for that distress, then that's when we have to find a way to stay safe in that moment. You know, we tend to think emotional trauma is only when you have a car crash or sexual abuse or, you know, when you witness violence or when you've had a death in the family. And that is traumatic. But trauma happens much more in the smaller things, like being scolded as a child, coming off the teat too early as a baby, being rejected, in the moments where you may find something completely unfair and you're not being looked after in the way that you emotionally need to be looked after. That's what happens. Now, in the moment that trauma happens, your consciousness splits, it fragments, and you become multiple parts. All humans are multiple personalities. We are all multiple parts, multiple personalities. It's only we call it multiple personality disorder when it's really, really out of control. Learn how you work emotionally. And one of the biggest things is when you start seeing yourself as multiple parts, you really get a handle of your life, of yourself emotionally, because that's how you work. That's how every single human works. So you are now these parts, and you have the ability to become as many parts as possible as you need. But what we do is, so let's use the example of, I am experiencing emotional distress. This distress is too overwhelming for me. That could be because of a car crash. It could be because of sexual abuse. It could be because I'm being scolded. It could be because I need to regain a connection with the people around me. So I reject this part of myself. Or if it's too overwhelming, I will not experience what this part of me is experiencing, which is, again, another form of rejection. And we reject it by putting it somewhere we don't have conscious awareness of, which is our subconscious.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, sure. So this human being is an emotional factory. This is how we work. When an emotion is fired off, it's a communication to me. For example, if someone does something to you that you're not okay with, or it crosses your boundaries, you will feel anger. Because the anger is a communication. It's telling you that your boundary has been crossed. Something's happening to you or happened to you that you're not okay with. It's valid to be angry. Now, as children, we will express ourselves authentically. Every human will express themselves authentically until they get taught not to. If you are being that feeling, you are being authentically true in the moment of how you are, who you are. But because, unfortunately, we live in a time where I still refer to as the emotional dark ages, most people don't understand how to be there for themselves or each other in an emotionally healthy way. So what happens is we try to control behavior of people, of humans, of this child. So in the moments that the child will be angry and the caregiver is not okay with that, I'm not okay with the child being angry, so I will scold the child in the moment. Now, we are social creatures, we're emotionally dependent species, and we're herd species. Connection for a human being is as important as food and water for our survival. Just the same way as if you don't have food and water, you do not survive. If you do not have connection, you do not survive. There have been studies on this. There have been really, like, if we talk about some of the studies, it'll make your toes curl because of going to the depths of understanding this. So in the moments, a caregiver would scold a child for being angry. That scolding is rejection through punishment. I'm using fear as a way to punish in order to correct behavior. Now, the experience of the child in that moment is rejection, and the rejection is losing that connection, the connection that I rely on for my survival. And I start feeling annihilation. Because that's how I work. We are a herd species. We have evolved to be social creatures, a herd, to stay together. We use love as a survival mechanism. If that love is removed in that moment and I'm being scolded, what I'm learning is that this is dangerous. When I'm angry, I have lost that connection that I rely on for my survival, and that's dangerous. That's unsafe. So I need to maintain that connection that I rely on. How do I maintain that connection? Well, if this angry part of me isn't acceptable and is the reason why I lose that connection, then I need to reject the angry part of myself in order to maintain that connection. So in that moment, my consciousness fragments, splits, and I reject the angry part of me. I reject it by putting it somewhere I don't have conscious awareness of, which is my subconscious. So now that is a part of me that I've completely rejected, that I am unaware of. Anything in my subconscious is something that I am unaware of, and that part of me will stay there. And because we live in a society that it's never okay or safe to be angry, whether you're angry in front of your friends, whether you're angry in front of your siblings, your work colleagues, your caregivers, anyone. So everyone is teaching us it's not okay to be angry. So I will continuously reject the angry part of myself all the time, constantly. And now it's a learned behavior, something that runs in the background, just something that I'm completely unconscious of. Me rejecting all of the angry parts of myself.
If I am this child that had split the fragments and I'm now learning it is unsafe for me to be angry because I'm getting rejection, and I grow up to be an adult and I'm in a relationship and someone tells me off, don't use all the water that we have, it's a form of rejection. What happens to the adult in that moment?
Well, Any trigger that you feel is a communication. Your human being is a complete and utter feedback to the conscious driver, which is the true you. You know, you are the conscious driver. You are your consciousness. And everything in your human being is a feedback. A trigger is a feedback. So this is where self-awareness is key, and it's very, very vital. And self-awareness is something that every human needs to be on a path on. If someone says, like, you know, don't use all the water, and I get annoyed about that. First of all, me being triggered and being annoyed is a communication to me. It's like telling me there's a communication of why I'm being annoyed. So there's an exploration. There's like, it can start with, why do I feel like that? What's happened? What meaning have I given to it? It requires that self-discovery. Most of the arguments, I'd say over 90% of the arguments that are happening in the world today are not really to do with what people are talking about at all.
Wow.
What I mean by that is, let's say that maybe my partner says to me, don't use all the water in the shower, and that bothers me. It's very easy to be like, why are you saying that to me? Like, of course I'm going to use as much as I need. Like, what you expect? It's very easy to look at that and go, okay, well, they're arguing about the amount of water that's being used. That's not what actually has made me angry in that moment. It requires the exploration. And once you do the exploration, you realize that whatever meaning, the underlying meaning we give to whatever we're talking about, the experience is what's actually bothering us, the core reason of what's actually bothering us. So in that instance, it'd be, don't use all the water in the shower. Okay, well, if I do the exploration, I'm angry, I'm annoyed. Why am I annoyed? I'm annoyed because she said, don't use all the water in the shower. Well, what meaning am I giving that about myself? It's like, well, if I'm being told not to use all the water, then that must mean that I'm not good enough to use the amount of water that I need to clean myself. Therefore, I'm not that important. I must not be that important if I can't even clean myself without someone being like, hey, you have a limited amount of cleaning and that's it. It's like, what? So what's really, really bothering me is the underlying meaning that I am giving in that instance, which is I'm not important or I'm not good enough. That's where my trigger is coming from. That's where my pain is coming from. That's where the anger is really stemming from there.
And then finding the right resolution and the right action forward. Is that where you say that's when someone matures into, or having reached a level of awareness that it's easier to deal with in a relationship?
It's the only way. There is no other way. If you're not self-aware, you're reactive. The only way to come out of that is through awareness. Now, you can have one person trying to be aware and trying to be like, hey, let's talk about this, or, you know, this happened and I'm not, and the other person might not want to hear it and the other person will be reactive. Those relationships will not work. They will not, you know, it will end if only one person wants to do it, the other one doesn't. You know, I was talking to my partner about this not too long ago, actually. Conscious relationship is where people are consciously becoming self-aware, doing the work on themselves, working together as well, and moving forward. It's kind of like upsetting, let's say, or maybe sad, is that we've actually named that, we've given it a title. It's a conscious relationship, where really it's just a healthy relationship.
If you're in a relationship, one partner is healed and the other isn't, is it possible to heal being in a relationship? Because a lot of people say you have to be doing the work by yourself first before you can be in a healthy relationship. Is that true?
Well, firstly, there's no such thing as healed, like, at all. No one is ever healed. It's a continuous ongoing journey that you continuously go to. There's never going to be an instance where one person is doing the work and the other one isn't. That relationship will end. Because if you're doing the work, you're raising your awareness, you will be going more towards self-love. You will not accept being treated in a way that is not okay with you. If you're truly doing the work, that's the path. And you will get to a stage where you'll be like, if you're not doing this, that's not okay with me. And that relationship will end if they're truly doing the work. If someone believes that they're doing the work, and continuing to stay with someone that is treating them in a way that they're not okay with, then there's a question to kind of be like, am I actually doing the work? Am I still abandoning myself? Because that is a self-abandonment. If someone is treating you in a way that you're not okay with and you're staying, you are abandoning yourself. And to do the work is to get to a place where you have very good boundaries and you stop abandoning yourself. In terms of people saying you have to be healed or you need to have done this work to, before you get in a relationship, there is an element of truth in it, but at the same time, it's not, that's not the case. Sometimes you have to learn to be okay being on your own. For some people, not all people, some people are actually there. We're all at different levels. I absolutely had to. I was the anxious attachment. I was the scapegoat. I was very, very, very wounded in so many ways. I was completely reliant on my partners. I put them on the highest pedestal. I abandoned myself so much. I was never the main character in my story. It was always other people. And I had to learn how to be okay with being on my own. It was the only way that I could truly start loving myself. That was part of my path. And there are people that are on a completely different path. There are people that didn't need to do what I needed to do. Every single decision a human being makes is based on how it makes them feel. Every single thing we want or don't want is because of how it makes us feel. If you're struggling to be on your own, the main reason you want to be with someone is because it gets rid of the feeling you are feeling when you are on your own. And that's where you start abandoning yourself again. Then that person becomes the key to me feeling good. Yes. And if someone is the key to me feeling good, I am reliant on them. Yep. And I will allow them to treat me bad. I will probably allow so many bad behaviors that I'm actually not okay with because I'm reliant on them.
So you would always come back to the same issue, right? Let's say you're alone and you feel loneliness, you're diving deeper and deeper into that negative state. In order for you to come out of that state, you pull yourself back up with a relationship with anyone who can pull you back out of there. And then you're up here, but you've actually avoided going down there. From my own experience, the resolution was to go down there and to be with those emotions. Would you say that is true?
It's absolutely true. Yes. I've done a painting that's actually the front cover of the shadow work exercise book that I've got. And in that painting, I call it duality. Yeah. And there's like yin yang, it's that concept. And there's like a human figure that goes inside each other and there's like red and black. It's to signify that you are both. You are the desirable, you are the undesirable. You are the light, you are the shadow. And what unfortunately most people do is try and have been taught to reject the shadow parts, the parts that are in pain. No one should ever like to be in pain. No one wants to be in pain. But we've not been taught what to do when we are in pain. We've not been taught what it is. We've not been taught how to resolve it. We've not been taught how to get out of it. So it's like, all right, well, I'm in pain. How do I get out of it? I know. Drinking gets me out of it. I'm going to keep drinking. Oh, smoking weed gets me out of it. I'm going to keep doing that. Oh, going to the gym gets me out of it. I'm going to keep doing that. Or better yet, being in a relationship gets me out of it, even though I'm not okay with how I'm being treated. So I'm going to do that. Eating gets me out of it. Working gets me out of it. So I'm going to keep doing that. And unfortunately, some of the things that we do that get us out of it, which is where our addiction comes from anyway, unfortunately, in today's world, are praised. Yeah. If you work so much, it's like, oh, you're dedicated. It's like you're addicted to work. Addiction is still addiction. Yeah. If you're addicted to work, it's like, oh, well, like you're addicted to the gym. You go 3 hours a day. It's like, very, very committed. I understand that's still an addiction. I'm not saying anyone does right or wrong, but it's about understanding, am I addicted to this thing? How do I feel when I don't do it? Yeah. How do I feel? Like, could I take a week off the gym? Like, if I can't, how's that going to make me feel? If it's going to make me feel uncomfortable and I start feeling anxiety, what do I do there?
If someone has been feeling loneliness And I think it's a great example for the dependency that you mentioned earlier, because our whole childhood, we're naturally dependent on our parents. But the moment we move out, and I saw a curve as to how much time we spend with other people throughout our lifetimes. And the curve starts very high. And then when we're in our 20s, it drops off. And then it goes to a very much lower point, because we're not surrounded by so many people. It's natural or normal for everyone. However, we haven't learned to not be dependent on other people. If we are in this state, what would be a starting point for someone to become aware of themselves and be able to spend time with themselves?
Well, one thing I definitely want to mention is, loneliness is not a natural part of humanity, of humans.
Yeah.
Loneliness is the result of the way that we're living today, in today's world.
Who explain
The
that?
way that we're living as humans is not for how we have evolved at all. We have not evolved for this world that we have built. We have not evolved for the social structures that we have. We have not evolved for the cultures that we have. We have not evolved for the way we bring up children. We have not evolved for any of this. You use the word normal, and this is something that I really, really talk about a lot. When we hear the word normal, we automatically think correct way of being. But that's not what normal is. Normal, the definition of normal is to conform to a standard. I can create a standard, and if you conform to that, then that is normal. That is your normal. I have my normal, you have your normal. And it's like, okay, well, let's explore this a little bit more as well. There are different cultures that live completely differently. There are some cultures in the world that get their loved ones out of the grave every year on their birthday. They clothe them and they take pictures of them. The entire cultures see that as normal.
Yeah.
But there are other cultures that will look at that and go, what are you doing? That's not normal. It's like, well, at the objective perspective, at the higher perspective, who's right? Who's wrong? How can we possibly say that we're right and they're wrong? All right, well, what's right and wrong? Aside from actual factual stuff, like, for example, I can be like, this is a pen. That is fact. It's wrong to say that it's a giraffe. It's right to say that it's a pen. Aside from that, everything else that's not factual, there is no right or wrong. Culture's getting people out of a grave every year. You can't say that's wrong. It's an opinion. Everything is opinion based in this term. And you could be like, well, let's go to the extreme. It's wrong biologically. We want to procreate. We want to we're built to creating more humans, increasing the population. So it would be wrong to kill people. Well, there are many states and many governments in the world that have the death penalty, and they all think it's right. So who's right and who's wrong? Most people will see what everyone else is doing and they will assign, or better yet, they will conform to that standard, which is, I will make my normal that. So when we see a world that is going through a loneliness epidemic right now, it's very understandable that we will look at that and go, that's normal. But, as early as the 1950s, pregnant ladies used to be in cafes and restaurants drinking and smoking, and no one would say anything. In the 50s, that was normal. If you see that now, everyone would be like, what are you doing? Don't do that. That's going to kill the baby. Like, what are you doing? Normal has now changed. So it's like, well, what's normal mean? It means to conform to a standard.
Yeah.
It's very important to understand that the reason why anyone feels or suffers from loneliness right now is because of the way society is structured. It's because of the way that we're living. Is because we don't know how to be there for each other in an emotionally healthy way. We are relationally dependent species. As children, we are dependent on our caregivers for our survival. And as we grow up, yes, we need to be less dependent, but that doesn't mean we need to be independent. Independence itself is a trauma response. It is a wound. We are relationally dependent species. We're social creatures and herd species. That doesn't mean I need to rely on people that can't be there for me. But if I get to a place where I'm like, I just need my time and I need to be alone on my own, that's not how we work. That's not how humans have evolved. We are relationally dependent species. I'm in a place where I understand this, but no one around me can be there for me. I'm feeling lonely. What do I do? You need to start learning how to meet a lot more of your needs than you have been.
What do you mean by that?
All of our pain comes from the experiences that we've had, the experiences that we have defined as trauma. In the moments where I would experience emotional distress without resolution, there's an invalidation of that reality, which is what's caused me to reject that part of myself and put it into my subconscious. In that moment, the reason that happened is because my emotional distress was unresolved. That emotional distress being unresolved was because of an unmet need. Maybe that need will be, I need to be somewhere safe, or I need this to stop. I need to be allowed to be angry. I need that person to not be like that towards me. I need my connection. I need to be loved, whatever that is. All of these parts of us which are carrying our pain have unmet needs. So we need to start learning how to meet a lot more of these unmet needs. And this is what healing is. Well, it's to do shadow work, and shadow work is to bring into the light of consciousness the unconscious parts of yourself. And when you bring them into the light, there's an element of communicating, understanding, connecting. And with all of that, you can go further and meet the need. And that need might be met through a state of imagination, or it might be a behavioral change in your 3D reality, in your external world. That could be like, oh, I'm going to stop going to these parties that I don't want to go to. I'm going to stop allowing this person to treat me like this. I'm going to say no when I don't want to go to places. On the flip side as well, it's not a case of, you are everything that you need. That's one of the most untruest things that you'll hear in like the spiritual community mostly. You are everything that you need. It's like, no, you're not. You're a human being. You're a relationally dependent species. You're a social creature. You're a herd species. To suggest that you are everything that you need is not true. That's like saying, well, you're spiritual, you're a spirit, you're everything that you need. Yeah, but you're also human. Well, that's not how the human works. Just the same way as if you jump in the deep end of the pool, you can't be like, it's okay, I'm a spirit, I'll be fine. It's like, no, your human being will drown and you'll die. So you are a social creature. You do need people as well. But, if you're at the stage where you look around and everyone in your life cannot be there for you, learn how to heal. And by healing, you are meeting a lot more needs yourself. You will get to the stage where you can be on your own and you can find joy in it as well. And new people will come in your life that can be there for you.
Yeah. So would you say part of the healing journey then is also the ability to cater for your own needs in a way that you invite others in and you learn to ask for help? I was raised by a mother who believed she was doing me a favor by raising me incredibly independent. But it also made me learn I will get rejected and won't be loved if I am not standing on my own feet. So that became an unsafe space for me to be in. By learning that is my default, my way out of it was to become more resourceful by asking people, can you help me? It was such a key to unlocking connections for me. I learned people actually like to help me. People like to support friends, and it's something that it comes and goes. I heard you say there is no such thing as being too needy. Would you mind explaining that?
Yeah. We are creatures of needs. We have needs. To be needy is normal. By being called too needy, that's not a true representation of what's actually happening in the moment. When I say too needy doesn't exist, it's because people don't understand what's actually happening in the moment. Food and water and connection. We need all of them for our survival. If you were to get lost in the desert and you're walking the desert for 5-6 days, only surviving from like drinking urine from your pants, you're going to be at this place where you're starving. You're going to be desperate for what you need for survival, which is food and water. Now, if you were to then find a house and you sit down at the table of that house and they've been like, oh my God, look at you. You've been walking the desert. All right, we're going to feed you. They even understand what you need in that moment. And they bring like a plate of pasta and they put it in front of you. The way you would be eating that pasta in that moment would be vastly different than if you didn't walk the desert for 6 days and you were just having your next meal of the day. If you and I had lunch early and if we were having dinner, we'd be sat down and our behaviors would be very different. We'd be like, hey, how you doing? And I, put my knife or the fork in the pasta and I'd be like, how was your day? Oh, that's really cool. And I'd be sipping my water. Everything would be fine. But in the moment, after spending 6 days with no food and water, my behavior would be very different. That plate of pasta in front of me, I wouldn't be like talking to you. My full focus and concentration would be like just getting that food in my mouth, getting the water in my mouth, and just being like aggressive. Because the thing that I have needed for my survival, I have been lacking for a long time, which dictates my behavior. The need for food and water in that moment is much higher for me, and that dictates my behavior. It's exactly the same for connection, emotional needs. When someone is behaving in a way that would seem extreme is because the need, whether it's vulnerability, it's connection, well, being themselves, the need for love, the need for being cared, compassion, whatever the need is that is unmet is at a level that is dictating their behavior to be like that. I myself have been called too needy by partners in the past. It was because I had a lot more unmet needs. I do not behave the same way that I did in the past because I have learned how to meet those needs myself. So was I being too needy, or was I behaving in a way that I hadn't had those needs met and for pretty much all my life?
Mm-hmm.
So too needy doesn't exist. Yes, needy exists. We are creatures of needs. But when people behave in a certain way, and someone who doesn't understand this, who again, emotional dark ages, we're not taught this stuff. We're not educated in school regarding anything to do with our emotions. And even the people that are educating us don't understand themselves. When it comes to emotion, we're still in the dark ages. It's not fully understood at all. If someone acts in a way that seems too needy, be curious why they're acting like that. What's going on? No one will act that way just for the sake of it. There's an underlying reason.
When you are, let's say, in that space, you're in your lowest point and you feel you are having the need to connect with other people, that pain is weighing so heavy on you. It's almost like you're in the water drowning, right? And you're trying to hang on to anything.
Yeah.
You're turning to your friends, but your friends aren't emotionally aware enough. They just don't want to deal with it. Maybe they have their own things going on as well. They just can't meet your needs. What would be a way for you to cope with that?
It's an interesting word you used. Coping has its place, but unfortunately, the world is seeing the answer being coping, and that's not what the answer is. Okay, so no one's broken at all. We're wounded. If I was to fall out of a tree and wound my legs to the degree that they're broken, in that moment, I'm in a lot of pain. It's a physical trauma. In that moment, I need something to cope with the pain. So if the paramedics arrive and they go, "Do you want morphine?" I'll be like, "Yes, I want morphine." Morphine is what's going to help me cope with the pain in the moment. That's my coping mechanism. But I can't use a coping mechanism as a long-term solution. The morphine is not going to heal my legs. It's just going to help me in the moment that I'm writhing around in pain. So coping has its place. And in the moments I'm deep in my pain, is it wrong for me to cope with something? No, I mean, personally, me, if I didn't cope in certain ways, like have weed or drink alcohol, I'd be dead. I would have killed myself. I've been this close to killing myself 3 times in my life. I would have absolutely killed myself. So coping does have its place, and it's kind of like a crutch to be able to work your way out of your pain. So whatever your coping mechanism is, recognize that it's not a long-term solution, and it'll never ever work as a long-term solution ever. If no one around me, which is very, very common in today's world in the emotional dark ages, can be there for me, what do I need to do? I need to learn how to be there for myself. Your pain is coming from parts of yourself that are wounded. It's just you're unaware of them. one of the most valuable things you're going to do is learn how you work as an emotional being. Once you learn how you work as an emotional being, you will recognize and learn what to do with that pain. The only way, just like if you were to fall out of a tree and break these legs, the only way that you're going to heal those legs is by going to the hospital, getting a cast around it, maybe having it on for weeks, 6 weeks or something. And then after that, going to physio, doing what you need to do to heal it. If I just not go to the hospital and I continuously have morphine and I try and get up and I keep re-breaking the legs because I can't walk on it properly and I keep falling over, it's never going to get better. It's never going to heal. If I learn how I work as an emotional being, I learn how to heal these parts of myself. And the more I heal, the less pain I'm going to feel. The more integrated I'm going to be, the more whole I'm going to feel, the more I'm going to get to my happiness.
How is it in a relationship when someone is emotionally struggling and they're trying to find their path of meeting their own needs, but the partner is supporting to meet those needs? Is that a good thing, or does it take away from their ability to meet their own needs?
Honestly, it really depends. It's never as black and white as that. You'll never get anyone to do anything they don't want to do, ever. Even if you talk to someone and you make them understand and they go down that path, it's because they want to. And they unconsciously want to. You're bringing awareness to the unconscious parts of themselves that they want to. But there are people that just don't want to, and you won't get them to do it. In order to be able to help meet someone's needs, it really depends. Is it a need that you have to learn how to meet on your own? If I meet that need, then we're still continuing this, you getting that externally from yourself, where now you're going to be completely reliant on me. But at the same time, in a partnership, I have to meet some of your needs. I'm your partner, and this is what I'm here for. As a man in a partnership, I'm here to create containment for the female, to create that safety, to create that emotional safety, to allow the feminine to flourish, to be vulnerable. I have to meet that need. But then if my partner is feeling these triggers in the moments that are bringing up certain wounds that she needs to meet herself, but she's always gotten it met through other people, it's like, is it really going to help her if I'm meeting that need? It's not, because then she's going to be completely reliant on me, and that's not going to be good for the relationship. So this is why self-awareness is key. There is no black and white broad answer to that. It really depends on the situation. The only way you can find out the correct answer is by doing the exploration. I can only do the exploration by raising my self-awareness, by both of us raising our self-awareness. I have to become aware of what's going on within me. You can also become aware of what's going on with you, and we can share that information together. So now I'm becoming aware of what's happening within you and myself. So then I can then make choices that can help you with what's going on with you, as well as you can make choices to help me what's going on with me. Doesn't mean you're responsible. Doesn't mean you have to. But if you're in a relationship with someone and you want that relationship to work, both sides want it to work, you will choose to, because that's part of the path.
On your website, I found a quote: "To love is to accept. If you unconditionally love someone, then you unconditionally accept them without needing them to change." What do you mean by that?
So to love is to accept. We are emotional beings. Whatever I feel in the moment is who I am. So if I'm talking to you like this now and this is how I am, this is who I am. But if I get angry, I might express that anger. But for you to accept that angry part of me is love. So you can be like, it's okay to be angry. I don't need you not to be angry. It's completely okay. How you feel is correct every single time, because it's a communication. I can't tell you the amount of times me and my partner have said that to each other, because A, it's a bit of a joke because it's my most famous quote, and B, the moments where we are exploring and we're working on our relationship as a way to help each other, we're like, how you feel is correct. I don't need you to change. I might not even agree with what you're saying, but that doesn't mean I need you to change how you feel or how you're showing up in this moment. It's okay to be angry, but you may have taken something in a way that I didn't mean to express it in that way. So if you say I was being rude to you, I validate your reality where you felt like I was being rude to you, but I don't agree that I was being rude to you. But that doesn't mean that I'm pushing what you're saying away. and then we work together and that, okay, well, I did feel like this. That's fair enough. And I can absolutely see why you would feel like that. And you know what? This is something that I'm aware of and something I'm going to work on. But to love is to accept. So I will accept you for who you are. That could mean as well that I accept you so much that I don't want you to change, but I'm not okay with your behavior towards me. So I don't need you to change. Okay, I accept you, but that doesn't mean that I want to be with you. There's the main two definitions of love that I've always been very, very drawn to is to accept fully and to take on as a part of yourself. And that's why self-love is very, very important. These aspects that we reject, that we are unaware of, you cannot heal without practicing self-love. To heal is to bring these aspects in with love, is to accept them. I cannot practice self-love if I am not on a journey of accepting myself and allowing myself to be how I am and bringing these parts of myself in. It's not possible. Self-love is not buying yourself something nice. Self-love is not taking yourself out to the cafe. But if you're not doing the work and you're not bringing these aspects in, you are not practicing self-love. But I can also do that with someone else. I can do that. We mainly do that with our children. Our children are us. The idea of it is if I've taken someone on as a part of myself, and if I make a decision that's going to hurt them, then it's going to hurt me. That's also love. But it's very, very important to understand as well. You know, a lot of people think I'm in a relationship with someone, I need to unconditionally love them. No, to be in a relationship, you actually shouldn't unconditionally love someone. We have conditions. Wouldn't it be crazy if I was in a relationship? It's like, well, the goal is unconditional love. So if I go sleep with someone else, you should accept that. Hang on, what? No, there are conditions. There are conditions to me being in a relationship. So the concept and understanding of what unconditional love is that, but that doesn't mean that I need to just completely be okay with whatever the person's doing, because that's not how we work. And there are conditions. I'm not okay being treated a certain way. I'm not okay with this happening as well.
I heard someone say for it to work, you don't need to be in a state of competition. You are in a state of cooperation where you make both sure that your emotional needs and safety is being met. And that's the condition.
Cooperation is kind of a dangerous word. What I mean by that is, you know, a lot of people, unfortunately, you hear it all the time. Success of a relationship is not longevity. That is not a successful relationship because you're with someone. There's so many people that really do not like their partner that they've been with for many, many years. Grandparents are like with each other for so long and they treat each other so badly. And, you know, and you hear all the time is like, you've got to make sacrifices. You got to sacrifice. But so it's like, what do we mean by cooperation? We need to start going towards is compatibility. Am I compatible with this partner? That's what I need to go towards. If I'm sacrificing, I'm abandoning my needs. I'm abandoning my values. What if I'm sacrificing something that's a huge value of mine? I'm going to get to the end of my life and I'm going to regret it. What if I want to do something that might seem completely crazy to my partner? And then she goes, no, absolutely, you're not doing that. And I'm like, oh, well, I've got to make sacrifices. It's like, what? Like, no, this is your life. You only live it once. As you live it once. So it's about finding compatibility of values. By being compatible doesn't mean that you're not willing to look at yourself and change behavior. But that behavior is like, you know, if your partner is like, hey, whenever you say something like that, you're saying it in a way that it's shaming me. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can look at that and I'll change that behavior. That's very different to sacrificing my needs or my wants or my desires. You know, if I want to build a business and it requires me to work really hard for 6 months to a year, and I might need to work evenings, and my partner's like, no, I'm not okay with that. So I'm not being supported in this. Am I compatible with my partner?
If you were to say this is the definition of compatibility, what would that be for you?
Where most of your values align with each other, I would say. To fully align with each other will be a bit of a, you know, work and everything. But if your core values are aligning with each other, that's the compatibility, because your core values are what drives you as a human being.
Yeah.
Even if we're not working to our core values, we don't feel right. so many people hate their jobs. So many people hate working that would love doing something that would be aligned with their core values, and they would love it. Your core values are what drive your existence. It's what gives you energy. So if you meet someone and you are compatible with your core values, you work the rest of the stuff out. You don't have to be absolutely every single one, but again, it's not a black and white answer. First of all, you need to figure out your own values, and that's something I promise you, unless you've done the work, you don't know. You do not know. You need to do the work in order to figure out what your values are.
I have an audience question. What advice do you have for someone who has no problem loving and accepting themselves when they are single, but struggle to feel worthiness and love for self in a relationship?
Well, if you're saying that you are completely okay within yourself when you're single and not when you're in a relationship, then you're not okay in yourself when you're single. You're unaware of the parts of yourself that you're not okay with, the parts of yourself that you cannot get to unless you're in a relationship, but they will only come up in a relationship. If I'm on my own, I feel okay because I'm not feeling these parts of myself. And this is, again, you can't heal parts of yourself. If you have people trauma, you need people in order to heal the people trauma. So when you're in a relationship and these parts of you are being presented to you and you're abandoning yourself, these are the parts of yourself that you're not okay with. When I get in a relationship and I'm shown these parts of myself, that's the time to do the work. It's not just in relationships, it's anything in life. It's like you will always be presented in a time in your life where your pain is going to be shown to you. That can be, I'm in a relationship, and that fear is going to come up. That feeling is always going to come up at some point. And the way that we've stayed safe is always by rejecting that fear, pushing it away. This may include pushing away a partner, because whenever I'm with a partner, then this fear comes up. So I end the relationship and I push this person away. But at some point, whether it's this partner or the next partner or the next partner, you're going to have to move forward. So it's about understanding that when these parts of myself come up, when I'm in a relationship, I have to start doing the work in that moment with these parts. But again, does the partner that I'm with, have I had this conversation with them to understand, are they working on themselves? Do they understand these are parts of myself that are coming up that I need them regarding this?
Which leads me to my final question.
Okay.
What is the most important thing that you have learned about love in your life?
Wow. I learned that love is not a feeling. It's not I feel great and that's love. I learned love isn't just feeling good. Love is sometimes feeling undesirable. And I've learned that love is the reason why we do anything, really. You know, I feel thankful that there are lessons that I've already learned. Some people learn at the end of their lives. Some of those lessons are things like, what's the point of achieving anything if I don't have anyone to share it with? And that all comes from love. That comes from learning how to love myself, which has also allowed me to love others in a proper way. And I've learned that I can only love others if I love myself. Truly love others if I can love myself. I only know how to love to the degree that I can love myself. I'd say those are the most important things I've learned about love.
Great. These are beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing. Thanks so much for being on the Bliss Republic podcast with me today, Arian. It was an absolute pleasure to interview you. So thank you very much. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I've really had a great conversation. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe and share this episode with someone who can benefit from it. Have a beautiful day, bliss and bless.